Hello, we're going to talk about money and art. I'm Dawn Garcia. I am the director of the John S. Knight Journalism Fellowships at Stanford University. Our program defends and empowers global innovators in journalism, and one of those, I'm proud to say, is Elodie. So let's have a round of applause for Elodie. So impressed and inspired by what we've seen so far today, and her team and the summit. I just wanted to say our program at Stanford invests in photojournalism in a deep way. Every year we have great photojournalists, and we have some alumni. Would you just raise your hands who are here today, including Adriana Garcia, who's had applause. So the topic of this session is just really near and dear to my heart. It's extremely important. Visuals in journalism are not just kind of a nice to have, they're a must have, not only because of all the reasons that you know about the power of photos, but it's just a way that visuals tell stories in a way that words alone cannot. And there's an element of trust that I think has been broken in some communities and that we could get back by the power of visual journalism. So we have two great people with us today. We're going to be looking to discuss what foundations look for when investing in visual journalism, and what are the needs for today and tomorrow, and what approaches have been the most successful. So we're going to hear from two representatives of leading foundations who are supporting visual journalism for their perspectives on the impact of visual storytelling in our society. So we have Jeff Cohen of Arnold Ventures and Ines Familiar-Miller of the Kresge Foundation. Let's give them a round of applause for being with us today.
Thank you.
I'm going to briefly introduce them. You can see more about them in your online and on the site. So Jeff oversees the Arnold Ventures media portfolio. Before joining the foundation, he spent more than 40 years as a reporter and editor at newspapers around the country. Arnold Ventures provides grants to about 90 communication endeavors, including Catchlight. That's the most important thing. Ines Familiar-Miller is a program officer at the Arts and Culture program at the Kresge Foundation, where she works to expand equity and opportunity by positioning culture and creativity as drivers for more just communities. So we're going to hear more from Ines about her work. So let's start with some opening remarks from our panelists. So what do you see as the value of visuals in journalism? What drives your foundations to do this work? Jeff, why visual journalism? Why are you funding this?
Well, thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Elodie, for having me. And I want to just amplify one thing Elodie said earlier, and that is that it's World Press Freedom Day.
Yes.
And I think she talked about more than 130 journalists died last year, and more have already died this year. And I think, all of us, especially those of you that carry cameras, should stop and think about that. And so what sort of drives me is that photojournalists that I've hired over the years, and I've hired a lot of journalists, are always the most brave people that you run across, especially those I think that work for the wire services in many ways. There's nothing like an AP photographer who risk their lives. They die getting photos that change the world, the discussion as we know it. So as a funder, I am aware of the research. I work at pretty much a research foundation, and we talk a lot about the impact of photography. And I was at dinner this week with one of your colleagues, a journalism professor at Stanford, and I asked him, is my research that I worked on for this grant, current? And he says, well, Jeff, you don't need research to know that visuals, impact every aspect of these digital websites, but I do rely on the research. And the point that I'm trying to make is that, too many of the sites that we fund are text heavy. They need visuals. And Elodie was the first person that I came across that drew that line, and said, I can help get visual journalism into these websites at scale. And she's proven it. And so, that's why we came in with, a sizable grant, because we think that ultimately that's going to pay off in better storytelling, better audience, et cetera.
Great, thank you. So Ines, talk about Kresge, how that works, and how visual storytelling fits into the work that you do for your broader arts and culture strategy.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation and for Catchlight for putting this amazing gathering together. I'm so happy to be here today. So just to frame a little bit, Kresge is a community development foundation, a comprehensive community development foundation working to expand equity and opportunity in America's cities. And
You're based in Detroit, right?
Based out of Detroit.
Out of Detroit.
Yes, we're a national foundation based out of Detroit. When I say comprehensive community development, I mean that we understand that people don't live their lives in silos and that there are multiple dimensions of what enable people to thrive, to lead healthy, sustainable, joyous, and self-determined lives. And within that, the Arts and Culture program focuses on positioning culture and creativity as drivers of more just communities. And so what this means is that we work at the intersection of where culture and creativity intersect with community development, with urban planning, community-engaged design. And, just to be frank, we, journalism is not one of our programmatic areas, right, at that foundation. But for the Arts and Culture program, we believe that when people are able to own and tell their own stories, that's a key contributor to what enables long-term change to happen, and that's what brings us to this work. And throughout the years, we've been able to partner with a few organizations that do journalism, including Catchlight. We've been able to partner for about 7 years, I believe, now. And really, what this has enabled us to do is to learn the power of visual storytelling to drive change in communities, to amplify stories, amplify solutions, and really connect the value of creativity and what that brings to storytelling and journalism.
Great. So I wanted to talk today about what is the greatest need in society you think that photojournalism can illuminate. What can photojournalism solve?
Well, when I think about photojournalism and what its greatest calling is shining a light on man's inhumanity to man. And there are great sports photos and great arts photos and music photos, but it is that photographer's lens on a subject that can expose deep problems. And in our office, right outside the living donor's office is a series of Salgado photos. And these are Salgado photos from the gold mine. And I walk by that every day, and I, maybe at a rush down the hall, but I always stop. And I just think about how this man, still living, an economist turned photographer, used his camera to really shine the light of, the problems and how we exploit miners in Brazil. And, it's that exploitation that, our journalists, that we want to solve that. And it's just essential to have the camera with an empathetic photographer bringing that. So it's kind of a joy to fund some of these young photographers doing the same thing.
Great. Ines, can you talk about an example or two of funding that you've done of photos that really impacted your work or that really meant something to your heart?
I think, in terms of, we don't fund specific individual artists, right? But, I think that throughout the work that we've been able to support with Catchlight, all of the stories and photographs that came out of the work around housing and housing pressures here in the Bay Area. I think that those were extremely powerful, and also like how those stories were able to inform broader changes at the local and even like broader regional and state levels. So I think like that's like a good example of like a particular story that was also told in a visual way that was able to enact really tangible change.
Mm-hmm. So Jeff, one of the areas of Arnold is policy in state capitals and also investigative journalism. So I'd love to talk about investigative journalism, which is near and dear to my heart as well. So investigative journalism, I think in the past and sometimes still too often is presented as a really text-heavy project, whatever format it's being presented in, and that visuals are sometimes an afterthought. I'd like to ask you about the power of visuals to innovate investigative journalism.
Well, we do fund a lot of investigative journalism, and when we talk to the grantees, I mean, we do talk about the importance of the visuals, whether it's photography, video, data visualization, et cetera. And so, you know, the example that I would use is, and it's really not investigative news, but you can write 10,000 words about what happened at the World Trade Center, but when you see one photo of someone jumping, you know, that tells the story. So in investigative work, Elodie's helped us do photo series for the foundation to explain huge problems in the Medicare, Medicaid system called dual eligible. I know our grantees at ProPublica, they have done just some amazing photojournalism work. So, you know, it is out there, but I think to the point of your question, you know, not enough yet, but as soon as the editors start seeing the research and understanding that the game is changing on how audience is built and how people are accessing information, there's going to be a lot more emphasis on images, both still and moving.
Great. So given the current climate, we've been talking, it's World Press Freedom Day. There is also a huge sea change going on, political, economic. What role does philanthropy play as a movement to help visuals and especially photojournalism?
Well, I know that that's a question that I think is probably on a lot of people's minds.
We'd like the answer now. Yeah.
I wish I could solve it. But, you know, I'm always a little bit mindful of doing like blanket statements because, you know, philanthropy is not a monolith, and I certainly cannot speak for the field. But, you know, I think I certainly acknowledge that these times are very challenging for individuals, for organizations, communities, and those who want to tell their stories. You know, as a funder, as a human, I am not immune to those challenges as well. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think that with times of crisis and challenges, there's also opportunity. And so I think the opportunity is, how do we think about things differently now? How do we think holistically about our funding strategies? And like what enables and creates the conditions for the organizations that we want to support to be able to do their work? Where are people getting the information that they need, whether it's an individual, an organization, a policymaker, a funder, whoever? Like, where are they getting their information, and how can that be more impactful? And lastly, like, how do we think about hope? Like, how do we elevate solutions? Because, you know, there's a lot of negativity, and I mean, understandably. But we also I think we need to lift up and amplify solutions so that people can make the best decisions that they can for their communities.
Jeff.
Yes.
Do that.
You know, I think those solutions, those challenges that you talked about. So at our foundation, we we look at philanthropy through the lens of an economist, and we see broken market systems, and we go in and try and fix those, or use philanthropy to catalyze some change, whether it's in the healthcare cost containments that I mentioned kind of earlier, or we do a lot of work in the criminal justice space. So we see journalism as another example of a market failure. And we believe that philanthropy has to get in there and see journalism the same way that many funders and communities see museums or see the ballet or the opera.
It's a public good, right?
It is a public good and a public service. And so we just, we get in there and we say, we're going to do it. Now, we've been doing that for quite a while, and is today different? It is different, but I think that the job for journalists today is to keep looking for funding, but to keep the eye on the work that the work ahead, the work that needs to be done, and it is essential for the funding community. And there's some funders here. We've just got to go out and help people like Elodie identify more sources of funding, because these organizations or the other 90 people in the portfolio that I manage, they're not going to survive without institutional philanthropy. And really all of you recognizing that it's important to pay for information these days.
Yeah, and pay for photography. Is there advice for people in this room about how to search for and what kind of work they need to be doing to meet the needs and to be recognized by funders, by those who are looking to support the really good work that's done here?
Well, I mean, I think firstly is identifying where there are areas of intersection within a funder's strategies. It's very hard to make the case for something that's not clearly aligned with what's been outlined as your vision and your strategy. And, we get tons of requests and there's tons of needs. And so we're all always trying to tackle and find ways of supporting. So I think finding that intersection and making sure, like I was saying, of making the case of how does my work align, whether if you're working in housing, you're working in transit, you're working in health, how does me telling this story help advance that mission and strategy?
It was the two presenters that started the session today. Not only did a great job with their photography, but they were able to tell the story, stand here and convey it to the assembled group. And I think that what I would advise people today is it's not just your ability to capture the image, to be brave, to run to the fire, but you've got to be able to talk about it and tell the story. And it's just so much harder today. You've got to understand ethics. You've got to understand data. You've got to be the person writing the caption and writing the story. And the photographers I hired early on, they weren't doing that. It was all about the photo. So today, that would be my main advice to them. But I've got a lot of advice.
Well, we hope you get to tell some of that. So I'm going to put in a little personal note here for our program. We're about to announce Tuesday our next class of JSK Fellows. I'm very excited about that, so watch this space. And for Elodie and for Shazna, and oh my gosh, there's more of you. Hi. Wonderful alumni of our program know our program invests in journalists who are looking to innovate and to be leaders in this field and to be their authentic self and bring themselves to a year at Stanford to be empowered and have them go far in the field. So take a look at this, my little pitch for our program coming forward. I wanted to ask you, we just have a little bit of time left. Do you have a favorite photograph? You did talk about one of yours already, maybe. A favorite photograph and why?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was trained as a historian.
Oh,
so certainly my approach always like ties to the historical aspect of it all. And I always go back to Casasola's images of the Mexican Revolution and the soldaderas, you know, because it like portrays a different aspect of what one might imagine that had to be.
Right, we have 8 seconds. Ooh.
Well, I've got, many favorite photographs, but the Pulitzer Prizes are next week. Right?
Oh.
And obviously that photo of President Trump on the stage is going to be a winner. The question is, which photographer are they going to pick? But I think that what I would urge everyone to do when they see that photo win, and that's my prediction, although I don't have a winner at the Kentucky Derby, but to think about, how that photo, like so many others, changed the trajectory of events.
Great. Thank you so much to Jeff and Ines, and thank you for listening.